When you first start learning how to shoot in manual mode, it can be really confusing and really intimidating all at the same time. So in this video, I'm going to give you a basic exposure guide that's going to get you started really quick into learning how to shoot in manual. I'm going to teach you in a way that I wish it was taught to me. The first step in understanding how to properly expose an image is understanding the exposure triangle. The exposure triangle consists of three things: shutter speed, aperture, and ISO. These are the three main ingredients of exposing an image. Learning these will teach you the fundamentals and the basics of videography. First up is aperture, or the size of the hole in the lens diaphragm. As the lens diaphragm changes sizes, it allows different levels of light onto the sensor, changing the exposure of your image. Aperture is measured in f-stops. So the larger the number, the smaller the hole is. The smaller the number, the larger the hole is. One thing to know about aperture is that depending on the number you're using, your depth of field will change. On the lower f-stop number, your depth of field is going to be a lot more shallower, and you're going to have a blur on things not in focus called bokeh. On a larger f-stop number, your depth of field is going to be much wider, and you're going to have a lot more things in focus and less bokeh. Now right now, my aperture is 5.6, so if you look at me, I'm in focus, so I'm crystal clear and sharp, but if you look at the items on my taskbar, they're a little blurred, which is being affected by the bokeh. Next up is shutter speed, or the amount of time that your sensor is exposed to light to create a single frame of your video. Now shutter speed is measured in fractions of a second, so let's just say our shutter speed is 1/60. That literally means the sensor is being exposed for 1/60th of a second. When adjusting shutter speed, follow the 180-degree shutter rule. So here are the rules for following the 180-degree shutter rule. You take your frame rate, multiply it by 2, and that's the shutter speed you're going to want to run in your video. So you follow the 180-degree shutter rule so that you get natural motion blur. You follow it to get natural motion blur because sometimes when you don't have that natural motion blur, it looks really weird. A lot of times though, people adjust their shutter speed to create an artistic effect, but if you just want to have a normal looking video, follow the 180-degree rule, and in the end, it's up to you, so go crazy. Along the lines of being artistic, if you raise your shutter speed, you are going to get less motion blur. Likewise, if you lower it, you are going to get more. The third and final aspect of the exposure triangle is ISO. You may hear it pronounced ISO or ISO, but in the end, it doesn't matter, it means the exact same thing. Now, what that means is that ISO literally is just the sensitivity that your sensor has when light hits it. At different ISO levels, it interprets the light differently. The best practice when shooting with ISO is to keep it as low as possible. You want to do this because if you raise it to a certain level, you'll start to get image noise. Now, a lot of cameras offer auto ISO, meaning that the computer in your camera determines what ISO will fit the build for your exposure. Usually the camera does a fantastic job at choosing what ISO to choose. Usually it does a really good job at properly exposing the image and keeping image noise low, or if not zero. Currently I'm shooting auto ISO and it's doing a great job. One major takeaway of this video that you should get is that when you adjust one setting on the exposure triangle, you're going to have to adjust one, if not the other two of the other settings to get a properly exposed image. In every situation, there isn't just one proper way to expose your image. There are many different ways to change it based on how you want the image to look.